I'm still sort of reeling from our last conversation on Leviticus 9 and 10. That was a heavy one.
It really was. That whole idea that obedience and good intentions are not the same thing,
Yeah,
it sticks with you.
it totally does. And it created this incredibly high stakes atmosphere. You've got
Yeah.
fire from heaven, you've got priests dying right there in the tabernacle. It's intense.
A theological thriller almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you turn the page to chapter 11, expecting, I don't know, the next big dramatic moment, and you get a menu.
It's a bit of a gear shift, to say the least.
It's a grocery list. We
Yeah.
go from don't bring unauthorized fire or you will literally die to, hey, don't eat shrimp. And I have to be honest, this is where most people, myself included, usually just check out.
Oh, for sure. It's the classic off-ramp for any Bible in a year plane.
Right. It feels so archaic. It's like reading the terms and conditions on a software update.
Yeah.
You just want to scroll to the bottom and click agree.
And that's the standard reaction. We see it as this primitive health code we've thankfully moved past. But if we start from the idea that all scripture is actually valuable, then there has to be something deeper going on than just a list of taboo snacks.
Okay, but isn't it a health code? I mean, I've heard that my whole life. God banned pork because of trichinosis, shellfish because they're bottom feeders. It was just ancient food safety, right?
That's a good theory. But if that were the case, you'd think the text would mention health or hygiene, sickness, anything like that.
And it doesn't.
Not once. Plus, look at Israel's neighbors. The Canaanites, the Romans, they loved pork. They ate it all the time, and, they weren't all dropping dead. They managed to build empires while eating bacon.
Huh. So if it's not about nutrition,
Mm-hmm.
what are we actually looking at?
We're looking at a training manual, not for diet, but for worldview. Leviticus 11 is about teaching a group of recently freed slaves how to think differently, how to structure their entire reality.
Okay, structuring reality sounds big. How do we get from cud chewing and split hooves to an entire worldview?
You have to rewind all the way back to Genesis 1. Think about how God creates. He doesn't just make a blob of existence. He separates things.
Light from darkness, water from land.
Exactly. He makes distinctions. He creates 3 clear environments: the sky, the water, and the land. And then he fills them with creatures perfectly suited to live in those specific zones.
So there's a proper place for everything.
Precisely. And this is where the idea of clean and unclean comes in. In the ancient world, holiness meant wholeness, order. Something is clean if it fits its created category, it stays in its lane.
And unclean means it's out of order.
It's out of order. It's a category mixer. It blurs the lines that God drew at creation.
Okay, give me an example, because that's still a little abstract.
Let's start with the water. The ideal water creature is a fish, right?
Right, the fish.
And a proper fish has fins to move and scales for protection. So Leviticus says anything in the water with fins and scales is clean. It fits the design. It's normal.
So trout, salmon, tuna, all good. But then you get the lobster. Or a clam.
Think about a lobster. It lives in the water, but it has legs. It walks on the seafloor like a land animal. It has a shell, not scales. It's an anomaly.
So it's not that a lobster is muddy or dirty, it's that it's confusing.
Exactly. It's a category error. To eat it is to, in a sense, internalize that chaos. Same with an eel. It lives in the water, but it moves like a snake. No fins, no scales. It's a hybrid, unclean.
I'm starting to see it's like cosmic zoning laws. So what about the land animals? This is where the pig comes in.
Right. On the land, the ideal animal for Israel is the herd animal. Your sheep, goats, cattle. What do they have in common? They have split hooves for stability, and they chew the cud.
So that's the formula. Split hoof, choose the cud.
Yep. Chewing the cud is the visible sign that it's a peaceful herbivore. It eats grass. It's not a predator. It's not shedding blood to eat.
So a cow is the gold standard. Checks both boxes.
Perfectly. But now look at the exceptions, the text names. The camel, the hare, and the pig.
Let's talk about the pig. Why is the pig the ultimate unclean animal in so much of Jewish tradition?
Because the pig is the most deceptive of the bunch. A camel doesn't have a split hoof. You can see from a distance it's out.
But the pig does.
The pig has a perfectly split hoof. From the outside, it looks like it fits. It looks kosher. But it doesn't chew the cud. It's a scavenger. It eats anything.
So it's a hypocrite.
That's exactly it. The later rabbis saw it as the symbol of hypocrisy. It has the outward sign of cleanness, the hoof, but its inner nature is unclean. It fakes it. And that makes it symbolically more dangerous than an animal that's obviously wrong from the start.
Wow. Okay, that adds a completely different dimension. It's not just don't eat pork. It's a lesson. Beware of things that look right on the surface, but are chaotic underneath.
It's training wheels for discernment. You have to look closer. You can't just glance at the hoof. You have to see what it eats, what its nature is.
And the birds, I remember that list being mostly predators. Eagles, vultures.
Almost entirely birds of prey or scavengers. Think back to creation. Birds belong to the sky. But these birds swoop down to the land to kill. They connect the sky with death on the ground. They eat blood, which is a huge taboo.
They're crossing the boundary between life and death.
And sky and land. Compare that to a chicken or a dove. They eat grain. They're harmless.
So the lesson for an Israelite is basically, you are what you eat. If you eat chaotic, category-mixing animals, you're bringing that chaos into yourself.
You're internalizing disorder. And God is a God of order.
But then you get to the insects. And this part is wild. It says winged insects that walk on all fours are detestable.
Right, which sounds weird, but it's about their movement. Most of them just scuttle. They swarm. And swarming is seen as this chaotic, undifferentiated movement. But then there's an exception.
Locusts.
Right. Locusts, crickets, grasshoppers, the ones with jointed legs for hopping.
Why do they get a pass? A locust swarm is the definition of chaos.
But look at how an individual one moves. It doesn't just crawl. It has a specific mechanism, those big legs for leaping. It has a distinct mode of motion that separates it from the chaotic swarmers. It's so specific.
It seems so. Tedious, though. I mean, can you imagine? You're hungry, you just want to eat something, and you have to run this whole biological checklist first? Does it have fins? Does it hop? It sounds exhausting.
And I think the exhaustion, or at least the friction, is the entire point.
The friction.
Yeah. Before this, holiness was an event. It was something you did at the tabernacle. You brought your sacrifice, you watched the priest, and then you went home.
It was a Sunday morning thing.
Exactly. But with this, God is taking holiness out of the sanctuary and putting it right in the kitchen. He is invading the most basic, daily, biological part of your life, eating.
So lunch becomes a spiritual discipline.
It does. Eating is something we do on autopilot. We just grab what's there. But God is putting this speed bump in the middle of their instinct. He's forcing them to stop, to think, and to say, wait, I belong to God. I am set apart. I can't just consume whatever's in front of me.
It completely destroys the idea of neutral ground.
Totally. We love neutral ground. We want to think, okay, my faith affects my spiritual life, but my food, my entertainment, my shopping, that's just me. Leviticus 11 says, nope. There is no neutral. Every single bite is either an act of order or an act of chaos.
That's intense. You're never off the clock.
But it's also how you prevent spiritual amnesia. If holiness is just for the temple, you can forget God 6 days a week. If holiness dictates your menu, you're reminded of who you are and who you belong to 3 times a day.
It's a constant built-in reminder.
It builds a reflex. It builds the muscle of discernment. The whole point, the text says, is to distinguish between the unclean and the clean.
And you can't build that muscle unless you use it. If everything is permitted, you never have to choose. You just consume. This all comes back to trust then, doesn't it? Because even with this logic of order and category, some of it still feels arbitrary. Why a pig and not something else? At some point, you're just left with, because God said so.
And that's the ultimate test. We want the footnote. We want God to explain the nutritional science to us. We want a reason that makes sense to us.
You want to be the judge of the law, not the subject of it.
Yes. But look at how the chapter ends. In verses 44 and 45, God doesn't say, do this because it's healthier. He says, be holy, for I am holy.
That's the reason. The reason is his character.
His identity is the reason. They are to be holy, set apart, because he is holy. Their table has to look different because they have to look different from the Egyptians and the Canaanites. If you eat like your neighbors, eventually you become your neighbors. Assimilation starts at the dinner table.
That's historically proven, right? Distinct food laws are a huge part of why the Jewish people maintain their identity for millennia.
It creates a social boundary that protects their spiritual identity. It's absolutely brilliant.
Okay, so this all makes sense for ancient Israel. But here we are, Christians. I had bacon for breakfast. We have Peter's vision of the sheet coming down from heaven. Jesus saying, it's not what goes in the mouth that defiles you.
Right. We are very clearly not under the Levitical food code anymore.
So do we just file Leviticus 11 away as a historical curiosity? Or is there something we're still supposed to get from this?
The menu has changed, but the principle, the discipline of distinction hasn't gone away. If anything, the New Testament moves it from the stomach to the heart and mind, which is much more challenging.
So practically, what does that look like? If I'm not checking for fins and scales, how do I practice this?
You have to look at everything else you consume.
Media, information.
Everything. Social media feeds, news, entertainment, ideologies. We are eating all day long. And if we're honest, most of us have no filter at all.
Yeah.
We're spiritual scavengers. We just consume whatever is put in front of us.
We're the pig. We might look okay on the outside. We have the split hoof of going to church, but internally we're just gorging on chaos.
On things that are out of order, we consume narratives that mix truth with lies, beauty with degradation. We consume outrage on social media, and then we wonder why we feel so spiritually unwell.
So the modern version of this discipline is asking, does this thing I'm about to watch or read or listen to, does it align with the order of God's kingdom?
Is it whole? Is it true? Is this ordered? Or is it a hybrid? That's the question.
That is so much harder than just not eating shrimp.
It's infinitely harder. It requires real wisdom. Paul talks about being transformed by the renewing of your mind, not conformed to the world. Don't let the world press you into its mold.
Don't let it categorize you.
The world has its own system, right? So success is this, freedom is that. And the Christian is supposed to be the locust, the one that moves differently, the one that hops while everyone else just crawls along in the swarm.
I love that image, being the one that moves differently. So it's about formation. We are formed by what we refuse to just blindly consume.
It's the power of saying no. Saying no to some things, even if they seem harmless or neutral, is how you remind yourself who you are and who you belong to.
It's about being mindful. Holiness is never an accident, is it?
You don't just drift into it. You have to choose it again and again in all the small, tedious details of life.
It really changes how you see these boring parts of the Bible. The details are where we actually live.
And God wants to be in the details. He's redeeming the mundane.
Wow. So we went from a boring food list to a profound theology of order and discernment.
It's a lot to chew on.
Oh, terrible, terrible pun, but true. So before we wrap up, maybe a final thought for everyone listening.
Let's do it.
We talked about how these laws got rid of neutral ground. So maybe look at your own life this week, not just your diet. Look at your phone, your entertainment, your conversations.
And ask yourself, what are the neutral areas where I'm just on autopilot? Where am I consuming chaos just because it's easy?
And what would it look like to consciously bring God's order into that one little space, even if it feels tedious?
Especially if it feels tedious.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Take care.